What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, if you missed it online, was absolute mayhem after reports started to drop left and right around Microsoft and a new multi-platform approach that wouldn't just include some of their smaller titles, but some of the big quote-unquote system sellers, and it got quite the reaction online, which we'll go over, as well as apparently Microsoft planning their response and outline as to how things are going to be for the Xbox brand going forward. Then we're also going to be talking about the highly anticipated February Nintendo Direct, as Nintendo themselves made an update that, well, got the Nintendo Direct fever going once again. We'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is out at the end of this month, and I'm very excited for this game. But Square Enix has been going along and dropping updates here and there for the game with different video clips showing off gameplay, new characters, and even some benefits for people who played and have save data from Final Fantasy VII Remake. For example, we can see this posted up over on their official Twitter account, where they say this is a limited benefit for those who have saved data from the previous game. A summoned beast that unleashes powerful non-attribute attacks. That's right. If you have a save file from Final Fantasy VII Remake on your PlayStation 5, you would be able to just get Leviathan, I guess, from the beginning, which looks absolutely ridiculous here in this gameplay clip. I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be awesome. And the fact that, well, I have the integrated save file on my PlayStation, so I guess I'll just start with this summon right off the bat, which looks pretty powerful. So I'm all for that. But we do have that state of play this week, and we're expecting a demo of some kind to drop that should have our save data from that even going forward. So maybe we'll try out Leviathan earlier than we thought, unless that's for the full version. We also have the embargo that apparently, according to Tom Henderson, is lifting February 22nd, so plenty of time ahead of release for what I think is going to be a highly reviewed game, so exciting stuff for February. Also, for fans of the YuGiOh series, specifically going back to the old Game Boy and Game Boy Advance days, it appears Konami is putting together a collection of some of those classic releases. We can see this posted up. This is over on Nintendo Life. They have a screen grab here of what I believe was a stream, or at least just a promotional piece that they did, but this is called YuGiOh Early Days Collection. We're still waiting to hear more information around all the games that'll be included. At this time, I believe it's announced for Switch and Steam, and it's coming out sometime in 2024, but the two games that they've announced so far include YuGiOh Duel Monsters 4 Battle of the Great Duelist, that's from 2000, and then YuGiOh Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2 from 2001, so a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Advance game. And this was pretty exciting because back then, I do think those card games were kind of interesting with all the things they had to do to make it fit on what was very limited real estate with those screens. The amount of text you had to fit into these games, there was a lot of programming wizardry going on in the background to get that done. But really, these games were pretty good RPGs that mostly included, obviously, collecting cards to build out your deck. But back then, at least for me when I was younger, I wasn't getting booster packs all the time. So if you just got one of these games, it was kind of like getting booster packs all the time by obviously winning matches and getting new cards digitally. But I would go back to this just as kind of a kick of nostalgia, a blast from the past, so I'll keep an eye on this one. I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh now, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to go back and remember those games through this collection. Oh, and here's some exciting news for fans of live service games and you just want more of them, just to have them. Well, we can see this posted up. This is over on gamesindustry.biz, saying a new report from Griffin Gaming Partners says that, get this, 95% of game makers are developing or maintaining a live service game. This survey included 537 studios from across the globe. 66% of those studios, by the way, agreed that live services are necessary for long-term title success. So we're going to just see more and more live service games, I'm sure, going forward. How many of them even make it to the finish line? That's another story that I feel like. But yeah, live service games, even though we see them failing, it feels like another one will just pop right up to take its place, or we'll say attempt to take its place, provided everyone has enough time with all these live service games everywhere. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft and what appears to be forming this multi-platform approach to some of their large first-party releases. Before, we had talked about Hi-Fi Rush, which, based on the recent data mining of that update with some of those console-specific texture files, one for PlayStation, one for Switch, seems like that's inevitable, and we're just kind of waiting for its announcement, whether it's at a Nintendo event, a Sony event, or just Microsoft drops a press release whenever they want. But the other one was Sea of Thieves. Okay, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves. The big counterpoint was, you know what, if it's like the smaller games that aren't necessarily considered quote-unquote system sellers, it won't be a big deal. Well, there have been many rumors going around that there would be some sort of event coming up that Microsoft would hold where they would essentially explain to the Xbox user base what their intentions are going forward with some of these big releases that will be going to PlayStation 5 and potentially Nintendo Switch or whatever Nintendo's next device is. And things really started to accelerate yesterday, pretty much out of nowhere. Xbox Era, for example, posted this article up. It was an exclusive report saying Microsoft plans Starfield launch for PlayStation 5. They say, according to sources, we understand that currently Microsoft are planning a launch for Starfield on PlayStation 5 post the release of the already announced Shattered Space expansion for Xbox and PC, which is on target to arrive at some point later this year. We've also been informed that Microsoft have made additional investment in the PlayStation 5 dev kits to support ongoing development efforts, adding further fuel to the fire. Now, there is more discussion here around Hi-Fi Rush potentially coming out Q1, which we're currently in. In fact, we're working up to the halfway point of Q1 for this year, obviously the calendar year. So I'm expecting Hi-Fi Rush to come out anytime, like at least be announced, I'll say that, in the next couple of weeks, which we'll talk about one place that it could be announced here pretty soon. But then after this dropped, we had The Verge coming in with Tom Warren here, saying while Bethesda will launch its Indiana Jones game first as an Xbox console exclusive, it's currently set to have a rather short period of exclusivity. A release for PS5 is being considered for some months later, with Bethesda tentatively targeting a December 2024 launch for the Xbox and PC versions. That's right. We don't even have Indiana Jones out yet, and it's already being discussed to be heading to PlayStation 5 months after its Xbox release, which, according to them, again, December. So we could see a PlayStation version, I guess, the first half of 2025. Now, this brought up a lot of conversation online, as you would figure, since, again, it would not a big deal. Hi-Fi Rush, okay, fine. But now we're talking about Starfield, Indiana Jones, a licensed product that was, I think, a good way for them to market and push Xbox in general as the Indiana Jones machine, you could say. There's a big fan base there for a very recognizable figure, right, in just media. But them looking around and saying, okay, well, there's a few reasons you figure that Microsoft would do this. One, they need to make more money, and they got to find how, because I guess what they're doing now in terms of just Xbox as a console to focus on isn't necessarily cutting it, whether it's Game Pass, maybe hitting a roof, as they have mentioned before with Phil Spencer saying that, well, the Xbox has kind of been saturated now for Game Pass subscriptions. We have to look sort of elsewhere. And PC is apparently one that they're really focusing on and seeing accelerated growth with. But there comes a point in time where you got to keep growing. You got to figure out where to go with it. And I do, once again, wonder, as many people do with Game Pass there, how are sales of some of these games, right? Because games aren't getting cheaper to make, they're just getting more expensive. And when you look around and see Nintendo selling 10, 20, 30, 40 million copies, and PlayStation also reporting some of their games selling over 20 million copies, we don't really get that same kind of transparency from Microsoft, which is probably for a reason. But we can kind of look at this and say, well, they, I guess, need to just make more money. How do they do that? They do things like put Starfield or Indiana Jones, or to me at this point, anything's on the table now on PlayStation and then also on Switch. I mean, we've seen over time with people from different branches of Microsoft talking about Xbox and gaming in different ways, whether you have one executive say, we want to put it everywhere you can play a game or anywhere it has a screen, right? And then on the other side, it's like, well, it'd be case-by-case basis. I don't know how much of a case-by-case basis it is currently with the way some of these reports are painting it. And the biggest thing to me right now Microsoft isn't saying anything, specifically the Xbox division. Now, apparently that will be changing in February, as Xbox Era did report that we should expect something from Microsoft in the coming weeks. Now, that could be a couple of things. It could be a full-on event where they legitimately post up a video, discuss all these things, even if it's like a roundtable sit-down, which they've done with, when they do acquisitions, for example. They've done that with Bethesda and ZeniMax, that sort of thing. Or it's just an Xbox Wire press release, explain the situation, talk about their strategy. Maybe it's Xbox first is their tagline, and then it's 6 months to a year, timed exclusivity, and then it's on PlayStation 5, which, in Microsoft's mind, they'll make revenue from it, but you do have to wonder about some of those Xbox console sales that will probably just be completely limited at that point. I mean, there's the biggest thing, as we know, going back to the beginning of time with these consoles, you buy a console or a closed box and enter that ecosystem because there are games there that you want to play that are exclusive to it. But if Microsoft makes it so that's not the case, then yes, you can play them anywhere you want, but what does that do to the Xbox? So that's probably going to diminish its overall sales. Is that a big deal for Microsoft? Well, we're going to find out, I feel like, at this point, because yeah, I've seen more and more corroboration around Starfield, and if Starfield is going to PlayStation 5, to me, pretty much, we might see Halo. Halo Infinite could just show up. It's a free-to-play game. Microsoft understands that would help the overall population of the game tremendously, and probably recognition of the brand as well. So I will say, Xbox fans out there, brace yourselves, because I've seen the reaction online. It's not great, and I think at this time, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, they got to show up in some way and explain the situation, because as of now, it's mostly all these different Xbox news sites and places on Twitter that are doing the talking. So I think at this time, it's really up to Microsoft and the Xbox executives to explain what exactly is going on here. Next up, let's talk about the highly anticipated Nintendo Direct that isn't actually announced now, but technically people are all assuming it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, and we are starting to see some movement around different aspects like Hi-Fi Rush, which is apparently getting announced for other platforms in the next couple of weeks. Maybe a Direct is a good place to announce it if it is coming to Switch, as we're seeing with some of the data mining stuff. But then there is an update that absolutely sent the internet crazy, because we're hearing about the potential for a new Donkey Kong game. Well, you can see this posted up. This was captured by DK Vine, but it's a promotional hub for the Donkey Kong series. It's been added to Nintendo Switch Online homepage, almost like they're trying to get everyone familiar with Donkey Kong's history, right? All these different games. Now, I will point out, it's a good way to also promote Nintendo Switch Online for people maybe who haven't signed up for this tier, which is just the $20 tier for the NES and the Super Nintendo games. Also, we have Mario versus Donkey Kong coming up in 2 weeks, but you could look at this and say, hey, maybe they're just kind of planting the seeds, getting things ready for when that new Donkey Kong game will be announced at this upcoming Nintendo Direct. And I will say that if it's not that, I think it'd be kind of cool to see Donkey Kong 64 show up for the Nintendo Switch Online application. That with some online multiplayer would be aggravating, but would be kind of fun just for nostalgia's sake. Also, it's been a long time since I played through that single player, so it might be fun just kind of jump in for a few hours and see why most people don't like that game. But with that in mind, I feel like right now, more than ever, it's like Donkey Kong's time. Like, we see it with the theme park where they're talking about the new expansion for DK, right? We saw, obviously, DK in the movie have a very prominent role, and people really got a kick out of that. And then we have Mario versus Donkey Kong coming up here soon. I feel like now is the time to have that new DK game. Maybe it's not necessarily for launch of their next system, but if the next system's backwards compatible, who cares? Just announce it. It comes out sometime this year leading up to launch, and we'll have a new system to play that on. But I just think some of the things we've seen for Kirby with Kirby and the Forgotten Land seeing tremendous success, I think we'll see something like that with, I don't want to say, like, we have the different tiers for Mario games. I think most would agree that Donkey Kong is not on the level of a Mario, a Zelda, probably Splatoon, and I would even say at this time Animal Crossing. It was kind of there next to Kirby. Maybe with this a new Donkey Kong game, it could push it up to where Kirby is now, which I think jumped the tier with Forgotten Land. So I'm interested, because I do think this Direct is coming up here pretty soon, we'll say. And hey, I think a new Donkey Kong game would be a great way either to open the Direct or even close it out if Metroid Prime 4 is still nowhere to be seen. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Palworld that continues to drum up a ton of conversation and continues to have a bunch of people playing this game at all times, with current player count still over 1 million most times when you check online. But in this case, has more to do seemingly with the Pokemon Company's response without actually saying Palworld, just we're aware of that game that's out there. Well, in Japan, seems to have had an effect on many different talent agencies. We could see this posted up by VGC. They did the translation from Toiko Sports. They say, we have told our talent not to mention Palworld on social media or in public. This was done out of consideration for the Pokemon side. As an agency, this decision was made in consideration of future potential collaborations, as in, if the talent is talking about Palworld, maybe in a positive manner, as in, I'm really gonna kick out of playing this game, or sharing artwork or something there, or just being excited about it, that the Pokemon Company might just say, we're not dealing with you, that's not happening, we're going to blacklist you essentially. Now, this isn't the Pokemon Company leaning on anyone necessarily. I think the talent agency is like, okay, we don't know if there's any kind of investigation or litigation starting up behind the scenes, so currently, we're gonna play it safe and just tell people not to put that out in the public eye. Currently. Now, there's a chance that later on, months down the road, it's like, well, nothing's really happening, so you're good to go currently. But, like, this game, clearly controversial right now, and Nintendo, or the Pokemon Company with Nintendo, clearly looking into this, with Nintendo themselves even issuing DMCAs for different mods that actually put Pokemon into the game. So, I think more or less they're just trying to advise the talent to not fly too close to the sun or even test this whole thing, because for all we know right now, Nintendo could indeed be filing and preparing something that would basically annihilate this game, or at least get it pulled down and have everything go to court, and then that would be a ridiculous story at that time. So they're just playing it safe is all. They're just trying to keep their talent on the side of, hey, the Pokemon Company might want to work on with you in the future, unless you've tweeted or mentioned Palworld. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, with a Nintendo Direct expected to air in the next few weeks, will Metroid Prime 4 be there? 73% say no. Wow, Metroid Prime 4 cannot catch a break. Are we to the point now where people are just gonna vote no and just say, hey, you know what, if it's there, great, but I'm never expecting to see this game ever, unless Nintendo does some teasing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of when people believe this game is going to finally reemerge after the PNG we saw back in 2017. I mean, guys, March is going to be 7 years that this system's been out. June will be 7 years since we originally saw the Metroid Prime 4 logo. If it is going to come out on the next system, maybe as a launch cross-gen title, I would hope we would see it before that 7-year anniversary for the game's reveal, but we'll find out hopefully here in a couple of weeks with the Direct we all figure is happening. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from user who says, it's sad that stores would stop selling consoles. I feel like sales through the store is the best way to avoid the scalping situation we had with the launches of PS5 and Xbox Series. If you could only physically walk out of the store with one console, it would have prevented the people stockpiling them from online purchases. So I will agree with you in the sense that it's harder, but I would still see it a lot. So going back to the Wii, I remember this one very, very vividly, because as we know what happened with the Wii, it became like a scalper's dream at that point. These things were selling for 3 to 4 times the amount, and because the Wii was $250, it was a system that was much easier to stockpile and hold on to, because like for 4 of them, it was $1,000, which at that time, if you're flipping them for 3 to 4 times, you see how the multiplier kind of tacks on there. But when I was getting the Wii, we had to wait out in line of Walmart, and there was a couple families, I'll say, that had the 10-year-old kid getting one, the cousin getting one, the brother getting one, and the whole family all of a sudden would walk out with 6 different Wiis. And it was pretty obvious the way that they were talking about it, that they were going to be reselling all of them except for maybe one that they were keeping. It was a common practice then, still is now, I'm sure, but I will say you at least had a bit more control if the person behind the register wanted to block any of them from buying a bunch of systems at once. Most of the time they didn't really care though, because money's money and they're just trying to sell as many systems as they can until they sell out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Microsoft apparently making a big push now for all of their games going multi-platform. It's something we've never seen before in gaming from a first-party publisher perspective. Let me know if you think this is going to work for them or if it's something that's going to end up sinking them in the future. And also, what about this Nintendo Direct that's highly anticipated right now? What do you think the big game will be, and do you think Metroid Prime 4 will appear there? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.